Well, good evening. Look at this. A Madagascan hissing cockroach. Well, the 16th of April, and this is the next in our series of walking through the resurrection appearances of Jesus from John's Gospel. I'm in the bug room. There's lots to be afraid of in this room. Cockroaches, land snails down there, millipedes. What else have we got? Scorpions, sun beetles, stick insects. It's all going on in here. I tell you, if you don't like creepy crawlies, this is not a room to be locked in. Well, in John chapter 20, we read about how the disciples were locked in a room, not because of cockroaches or anything else. No, they were afraid of what was outside, not afraid of what was inside. Because of all that's happened to Jesus, they've locked themselves into the upper room out of fear of the Jewish leaders and what might happen to them. The fate that had fallen on Jesus, they didn't want that to happen to them. So they hide themselves away, they close the door. And then suddenly, Jesus appears within the room and says, "Peace be with you." I mean, he may as well have just said, "Boo!" They'd have been terrified. Jesus says, "Peace be with you." And the last thing that they're feeling is peace. They're just feeling fear. The doors are locked, there's no chimney, and yet Jesus has appeared in their midst. I often wonder if Jesus thought about what he was going to say to the disciples, and if he chose a thing that would just, do I just play this cool? I won't add any element of surprise at all, just peace be with you. Well, actually, there's great significance in those words. Peace. No more judgment. Nothing else to be afraid of. Peace. Shalom. Be at rest. And let the walls come down. You see, with the risen Jesus, there are no walls. Even the dividing wall of hostility between us and God has been demolished, writes Paul in the second chapter of his letter to the Ephesians. Or did he write it? That's a whole other debate. But it's there in Ephesians chapter 2, how Christ has demolished that wall of hostility. We live in a world where it's all about walls. Rather than taking down walls, some nations are building walls. Some communities pride themselves in hiding behind walls or very high gates and security systems in order to give themselves a sense of security, to keep out those who have less money, who are less fortunate, who are a risk to their own sense of privilege and well-being. And perhaps even within ourselves, we wall off different parts of our lives, keeping them from other people, maybe even keeping them from ourselves. Well, this risen Jesus has a habit of breaking through those defenses in order that in him and through him we might find a greater level of security, a greater peace with God, with the world, with other people, and with ourselves. The resurrected Jesus comes knocking at the doors of the walls of our hearts and asks if we'll allow him in order to dissolve those things of which we're afraid, so that we might live at peace. In the midst of this pandemic, there are lots of very real fears around, fears which are very well grounded indeed. But nevertheless, the God of life, the God of light, comes to us and says, "Do not be afraid. Do not fear, for I am with you." So will we allow Christ to come into our lives, to dissolve those fears, and to give us his peace? You don't need to be afraid of anything, even of these cockroaches. They're quite friendly, really. But more seriously, allow Christ to break down walls, to dissolve them, and to give you his peace.